Good afternoon, on what is a cool, bright and sunny day. It is Friday the 25th of November. I've got a nice hot cup of tea. And a parcel to continue going through. So what I've got in here is a big stack of magazines. I say big stack of magazines, 5 issues of a magazine called The Last Province. Now it was a Scottish magazine that was published between 1992 and 1993, and I've already done an unboxing of issue 1 and 2 and 3, so therefore the next one I'm going to look at is 4. And this promises heraldry and hitchhiking, how to turn the screw on your GM, horror scenario, heraldry, how to use it, basically. Heraldry and how to use it, hitchhiking, horror scenario, how to turn the screw on your GM. We've got an advert on the back for Slay Industries, which would have been new out back in 1992 from Nightfall Games. So, open up, and weirdly, I have some Chinese currency. I don't know why that is in there, but what we do have is an advert for Traveller New Era, which was the new edition of Traveller, which took it into a post Imperium civil war setting. In which essentially planets were trying to recover from what had happened before with the fall of the Empire and Emperor. So anyway, this is actually published in June and July 1993. So we've got The Last Word, which is the editorium verbatim, which obviously is the news section. And I've said before, the news section, that was where you would have got news about forthcoming releases and news in the industry. There wasn't a lot of news about in the industry, essentially, that we could access otherwise. No internet at the time, rites of passage. We have newsletters, letters pages, which are always a good part of a magazine. That's where you kind of build a community of people around the news, the letters pages. White Dwarf did it, Imagine did it to a certain extent, and so on. And then Pandora's Box. So Pandora's Box is the review section. Interesting set of reviews in here. We've got a review of Primal Order and Primal Order Pawns, a couple of supplements from Wizards of the Coast back then. No idea of just how big they were going to get at this point. Really just Magic had just sort of like appeared and so on. And of course Primal Order would be the books that Wizards of the Coast got into trouble with Palladium about. And then we get on to a review of Full Thrust down there. Full Thrust is a space miniatures combat game, and it would a nice, simple, kind of playable little game that would get support as sort of like the official sort of like Babylon 5 space combat rules as well. Grown Berets from Atlas Games, supplement for Cyberpunk. And then we've got Grimtooth's Dungeon of Doom, GURPS Time Travel reviews, all interesting, informative to look back and see what's there. Also Time Travel, GURPS Timelines, so lots of GURPS adventure supplements here being reviewed. GURPS Timeline, GURPS Middle Ages, GURPS Fantasy 2, Adventures in the Madland. This is all for GURPS 3rd edition. And I know people kind of don't like GURPS because it's clunky and complex and so on. At its base, it's not necessarily. But what it really does do very well is source books. So those source books would have been absolutely worth picking up and reading. Grimoire, 2nd edition for Shadowrun, Magic Encyclopedia for Dungeons & Dragons, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition reviews as well. What else have we got in here? Just flipping the pages. Thief's Challenge, scenario for Dungeons & Dragons, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Oriental Companion for Rolemaster, Man of War, the miniatures game from Games Workshop, as well as then you've got fantasy board game Dragonfire and Gatecrasher high-tech fantasy role-playing, which is one of the older role-playing games that people kind of forget about. Survival Margin, we go back to Traveller, and that would have been a sort of like scenario for it. Borderland for RuneQuest, Shadows in Borderland, so on, and then basically another advert for Slay Industries, and then we've got Discussion Place. And essentially, we've got a discussion piece from Steve Hatherley, talking about, how do you introduce preconceptions about certain games? Is it like D&D? Not quite so much. You don't get quite that much these days because people are thankfully, much more aware of sort of like hobby things in general. Dungeons and Dragons has sort of like just penetrated, beyond the hobby itself, so that people are aware of it, whether that's they've seen it on TV or heard about it being played. We've got 10 ways to crack a GM. The players reply, basically how to, make your game master's life difficult. It'll be interesting to read, I think, when I come to review it. Probably not going to necessarily agree with some of its points, because you're not actually necessarily meant to make your life, your game master's life difficult. It's about making the NPC's lives difficult if necessary. And then scenario on Familiars, I think. I'm not quite sure what this is for. Short fantasy scenario, playable session. Okay. Or a Dragon Pass on Sable, which is a set piece on heraldry. Now, I was really fascinated by heraldry as a teenager. Just really interested by it. Got a couple of books on it, and this is sort of like everything. Kind of good, solid introduction there, I suspect. Kind of ruined by not being in colour, because it is all about the colours and so on, as well as the symbols that you could see on the battlefield, and then Hitchhiker, it's a short adventure for chill, and probably easily adaptable to the horror role-playing game of choice. And then for the familiar scenario, you've got maps and so on. And I pretty much suspect that Motorcycle, which is basically the Hitchhiker horror scenario, is inspired by the Hitchhiker film. Starring Rutger Hauer, and let me see Thomas Howell as well, which is pretty good. Every gaming magazine needs its own comic strip. There we go. The Gamers. Then we have Magic in. Let me see what that's called, because Magic in the Making. Look at magic in role-playing, how to make it unique, or just different from other settings. And I mean, there are plenty of role-playing games which will treat magic in lots of different ways. So there's plenty of choice out there, and this is quite a lengthy article on the subject. All accompanied by, essentially, it's actually really quite good artwork. It is, so given, the sort of like the layout and style of the magazine, and then at Fahrenheit 451 is the book section. Again, only quite a shorter one, just the 2 pages, and then we have a look at Ringworld, which is really sort of like 1992 would have been a retrospective even then, because the game was certainly very much out of print, but a good overview. It's one role-playing game I don't have, would like to get hold of a copy, and would certainly like to give it a proper sort of like go through and review. I've had a chance to play it a couple of times and enjoyed it. Adverts for as well. Always the case whether you're looking for these magazines of the past. The adverts are fascinating, highlighting shops that are very likely no longer there, publishers no longer, operating, and books that have kind of been lost. And then Broken Spines, the high sky flying, basically the future universe of Cordwainer Smith. So I've got to look at a particular author and potentially adapting his material. So yeah, followed by a quick bibliography at the back. It's quite short, I think, but again, we've got sort of like different adverts for Ground Zero Games. I think they did. They're responsible for Full Thrust, and advert there for Leisure Games, which, unlike many of the publishers, many publishers and shops, is still going. So Leisure Games, as is, as far as I'm aware, the Gameskeeper in Oxford. I was there sort of like 4 years ago when we visited, and then we have a state of Stateside, which is what's up with Wizards of the Coast. This would have been, just at that point when Wizards of the Coast is just about to take off. With Magic news, you have news that Steve Jackson Game wins suit against the Secret Service. Then we get into Flash in the Pan, which is the miniature section. That's quite lengthy. Decent pictures of the miniatures themselves from various ranges, and then regular feature vignettes. This is sort of like short hooks or scenario ideas, and it's followed up by NPCs, which the referee or game master can bring into her game. And then we have Desperately Seeking Sue Monster. Definitely Seeking Sue Monster. We've got a classified section again. The whole point of part of the magazine part is building the community, and it's doing that through the classified section, and we've got a directory of stores there as well for retailers around the country. And then finally, feedback and an advert for Cyber Generation, which would have been sort of like a semi-sequel to Cyberpunk 2020 back then, but where you play as teenagers. So yeah, that's Last Province issue number 4, magazine which I will eventually get around to reviewing as part of my magazine madness, strand. But it's interesting to look at this, look at different magazines. Some of them more enjoyable than others. This one is, I think, it's got a good mix of content. Not necessarily all of it playable, but I think it's readable enough. Anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will find me out here with a parcel containing a book or game, or in this case some magazines, which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit that subscribe button down below. In the meantime, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. Be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.